Is that the YouTube one? Yep. Live.
Yeah.
Oh, live streamed.
And then I'll send it from there.
It's
Yep, we're
funny, Phil.
live.
I said to, oh, we're
You
live
see it? So
now.
we're live. Yep. So let's say hi.
Hey,
Hey, everybody. So we got Phil, we got Brother Phil, we got Brother Dave. They're going to have a lively conversation.
we'll probably just disappear into the light and be done with it, and that'll like.
Can you make
So
that
this
happen,
is,
Dave?
I could say it's already actually happened, but like when that is in time, no clue. But just keep chugging away at it, Just,
Right.
I remember Ted said it once years ago. One of my teachers, he said, "Man, you put two awakened minds in a room together, they got nothing to say." And it's like when Tina said to me, you and Phil should do a thing, and like, I'm like, what are we going to talk about? We're both awake, and like, what is there to say? We just want the party on and the dancing girls. That's about it.
it's so funny. You say that, and I look at videos. I'm like, Dave has talked for an hour straight. I guess it's when you're talking to people that are not awake, right?
It's supply and demand. It's kind
And
of
when me
like,
and Phil talk, we can go on and on and on. So now you guys, when you're talking, when you meet one another, then there's no conversation. So I guess I'm the common denominator.
well,
I,
I
I think
don't
it'll be
think
a
Phil and I
conversation.
want. Yeah, you can't bail out. Yeah, we're gonna
No.
sit here just like pulling funny faces at each other. Otherwise,
Well, you know, it
it,
kind of came about because when you did that thing last year with Lloyd, when you had that conversation with Lloyd, I just thought it was so cool to hear you two
yeah,
speak. And I thought of Phil like right after. I was like, dude, you should do this more often. And I thought of Phil. And then, one thing, whatever. Recently, you guys seem to be sort of communicating through Facebook. And I thought, here's
yeah. I
another
love Phil's stuff.
opportunity.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to actually spend less time on Facebook, but I got other things going on. But when I get on there, I see some of Phil's stuff, and I'm like, thank God, there's my brother. Like it's just a
That's not
nice.
what everybody says when they see it.
Oh no, that's good though. Who's this crackpot?
Right. He used to be semi-normal. Semi.
Yeah, exactly. I know that deal. But eventually, those of us that have adopted the cult mentality or whatever they call us sometimes, it's like that becomes culture, and then we become the what do you call it? The Lion King or the top of the heap. It's a funny thing. It's like once somebody gets it, once you hear that kind of like little click in your mind, and it's like, holy shit, none of this is so. It's all a dream. It's like then you become kind of popular for a minute. So it's a
With
weird thing.
who? With who?
Well, exactly, yeah, with who, but the illusion of popularity or the illusion of something desirable or something helpful.
Yeah, well, everybody comes from where they come from in this world of duality, and I came from the world of. I was thinking about this today. I put very little thought into this. I just wanted it to be free. But I was thinking earlier that here I'm not unique in any way other than we are all unique in a sense because we come from what we come from, and I come from a preacher's house. My dad was a preacher, and I was a sports guy. I played football. My whole life was football. To be honest with you, I was an NFL agent. So it for me, I was into the Bible, into the Bible studies, mission trips, church, and football, and my family. I had 4 kids, and Tina knows this. I don't know if you do, Dave, but I lost my oldest child almost 8.5 years ago, and that changed everything. It was like this God that's supposed to answer prayers. You know, my daughter withered away and died, and I was, you know, I died too. The old Phil died, but the new Phil wasn't on the way yet. The new Phil was. Let me rephrase that. Phil died.
Yeah.
And the part of us that is true, that is one, began to stir, I guess you'd say. And 3 years after she died, I guess, let me do this real quick. I'll give a very abbreviated history. After she died, we moved to Costa Rica because we needed to be out of the States for the holidays. And while we were here, we decided we had a better chance to heal here. It's me and my wife and 2 of my kids. But my wife and I got on a roller coaster. We'd had almost 3 decades of really good marriage, but then losing our child and some other stuff, it just became, crazy. And so 3 years into being down here, about almost 3 years, I felt this book calling to me called A Course in Miracles. Seemed like everywhere I looked or listened, I was hearing it. My wife had actually bought the book when we found out our daughter was dying, but I couldn't read it. I picked it up for about 2 minutes and got pissed off. And like, F this, and then my daughter died, and then yet it was calling to me. I was doing other things, like I was ready to look at anything, try anything, do anything. And so I heard you and Lloyd talk about your circumstances leading up to stuff. For me, I was seeking. I did ayahuasca. I went to the Monroe Institute. I mean, I was doing just about anything you could think of to try to jolt something in me to figure out what truth was, to find life, find peace, whatever. And my wife and I got into a very dark place in our marriage. And a little over 5 years ago, Thanksgiving in the United States, but it was down here in Costa Rica, I went into deep, deep, deep hell. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in a panic attack that you don't feel like you can survive out of, And that happened 2 nights in a row. And the third day after the second one, my Rottweiler died in my arms, took me back to my daughter's death. And that night I woke up immediately suicidal, out of my, I don't know how to describe it. The kind of despair, agony that you don't feel like anyone else has had that kind of despair. It's so deep,
Yeah.
You don't think you can survive 2 minutes. And so this is how revelation came to me. In the middle of the deepest despair, with no hope whatsoever, I began to breathe, just trying to become present. Just try, I was so desperate for anything. And I breathed in 2 or 3 times, and I was in heaven. I mean, it was so unbelievable of a transition from pure hell to pure heaven that you instantly knew that you were one with God, all that is. It's just, there are no words, and we think of separation, right, while we're here in duality. But the very instant that it occurred, it's like for a split transitional second, if a second existed, I said the word Meg, my wife's name. And then I instantly knew, no, she's not experiencing this. And then the only other person that came to my mind, and it is what happened. It was like it was given to me. You're experiencing, Eckhart Tolle is the only other person came in my mind. No other human being came into my mind. My daughter didn't come into my mind. You would have thought so, because I was in heaven.
Yeah.
No. But I was just given, you're experiencing what Eckhart experienced based on what I had read about his experience in The Power of Now. But I was given that for you, Phil, when you go back to sleep here in the middle of the night and wake back up, you're going to be back in hell. I was actually given that. And after the most ecstatic, indescribable knowledge experience, knowing I could be in that experience for as long as I stayed awake, I went on back to sleep because I knew who I was. And it was all about getting on with the business of whatever it was I was going to get on with, you know. And the next night I had another panic attack. How about that? So I would say the next 36 hours after that were brutal. And then I started coming out of it and have done a lot of stuff that you look at and say, well, this is not somebody who's had an awakening experience.
Absolutely.
You know,
I look at your stuff and I can tell this guy's done it, you know, like he's been right through there and out the other side. So that's good.
So anyway, that's it. You know, when you say, though, this is, you know, terminology is an interesting thing. So I'm going to get your take on this. Okay.
Yeah. Terminology,
semantic. People, we all, you know, wherever we are on this journey, we can tend to fight about this stuff. And I don't like to at all. I'm a guy who can debate. I can put stuff out there. I don't hardly do it at all. It just is not. It's become so low on the totem pole of interest to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, I've read so many things. Awake. I didn't know what had happened to me. I knew I'd gone to heaven. I knew I was one with God. I knew everybody was, but I didn't know anything else. And then somebody said, you were baptized in the Spirit. And then somebody said, you know, this, that, and the other. I'm like, and then finally, I was actually in the course. And a few months later, I was in my second reading of the course. And I read about the revelation there, and I just started weeping, you know.
Yeah.
And I've wept many times since.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, it's a journey. Well, I was talking about the semantics. I guess I would have, if I were to label things, which I don't like to do any more than I have to, I would have said I had a awakening, a partial temporary, whatever. It was like I instantly knew who I was and was going to know who I was, and yet I was not living in that state of pure peace every moment. I knew that wasn't the case either. I knew there was a lot to do, so I didn't know what to label it. You know, I just knew that I'd had what the course called a revelation once I saw it in print.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? You can have something so profound like that happen and not really know what's happened to you. It was the same. I had the same. I had a full revelation and then just found myself back here in the world and I didn't know what had happened. I knew I'd remembered me perfectly, but it actually took me, as in the I, but it actually took for Greta, this Dutch woman who was teaching at the time where I was, to explain to me what had happened to me. And she kind of made sense of it. Without that, I would have probably just been this drooling, gibbering mess and couldn't stop laughing and couldn't stop crying and couldn't stop everything. You know, I often recall the story of how I don't know if they have them in America anymore. We don't have it. We don't have like nut houses or asylums or whatever here so much anymore. They try to outsource all of that. But in the old days, and a friend of mine actually who was in there, we went to visit once, and there was a guy praying to trees, and there was another guy with his pants down, sort of following his tail around like a dog, and like people that had just sort of like gone over the edge. And before awakening, I would have said, oh, well, there's this and there's that. But you know, that's what happens with it. Like if you have a major shift in consciousness and you got nothing to back it up, like you're lucky you had Course in Miracles, I had Course in Miracles. And if you put yourself into it, it kind of makes sense of what happened. You know, you can sort of look at it from the reverse, you know, like a lot of guys will pick that book up and sort of start reading it. And I've had people tell me, oh, I got to lesson such and such, and then I had an experience. Some people have the experience first and they don't know what the hell happened. And then they go through the book and they're like, oh, I see now. Looking back, I can see the whole process. And, you know, it's like that dark night of the soul and that deep suicidal, I want to call it a rite of passage, really, because I mean, there's only two sort of processes that I've ever come across that talk about awakening, and one of them is through the dark night of the soul, and the other one's through the purification of the mind, both by the grace of God ultimately. But like you look at so many people's stories, And it's like from drug addiction to suicidal mania to just the collapse of the mental, and it's like, how the hell we ever get to this point where we're having a Zoom meeting? I don't know. It's like,
I feel like I had a collapse. I mean, I was
right.
dragged kicking and screaming and out of my mind to the pit of hell. And you open up the pit of hell, and there's heaven on the other side.
Yeah.
It's they're like right there next to each other. But
yeah, it's like a flip. It just flips over like that all of a sudden.
Yeah, and there's nothing that anyone could say, look at me, what I did, because it was like it was unwordable pain that led to, when I look back at it, I was like, you know what? I guess I surrendered. I had no chance at life anymore. I gave everything up, and it was like, God, the only chance I have is if you do something. That was it. That's it. And boy, did he. Anyway, so it's very humbling. It's very humbling because you instantly know that there's zero way that you could be better or worse than anyone else. It's just not. And then you come out of it, and you can think you are or you're not, but you know it.
Yeah,
you know it. So, and that's a beautiful. Yeah, there's no one else. But while we seem to be in our bodies, or seem to be, when you slip into that state, which for me has been often, of egoic trance, I call it. Your mind goes to this place where you see yourself in comparison, and yet it keeps coming back. There is no comparison. You're one, period. It's the mind that is fragmented, and it's like a billions of little aspects of the same mind that are it's the dream at night, except we're all the characters. That's the only difference, right? You dream at night and you're Dave, and you got other characters. Maybe you don't anymore. I don't know. me, I'm still just the Phil character.
There's a bit in the course where Jesus says, trying to get the words right. Tina always knows the words right better than me, but where he talks about it being a crusade. This is the last crusade, and the motto of the crusade is listen, learn, and do. And in recent years, like it's been 27 years since my awakening, but it's still just as thick and fast sometimes as it was back then. I feel sometimes like I have a better mastery of the tools of forgiveness and compassion and all these sorts of things now, but sometimes I get a ball out of left field and it hits me on the nut, and it's like, what the hell, and then there's just a whole thing again. But nowadays, and I'll talk about it in time, but nowadays, I feel like I have learned to see myself as a crusader, and I really enjoy going down the rabbit hole. Like I'll put on an identity. This is a funny story, but I got invited to a medieval fair, right, at wherever it was, about an hour from here.
You remember that? No,
it was so fun. We have a video of it.
You got a video of it? We have a video
of we have a video of the meeting when you did it. Oh. We all dressed up. You don't remember? We all dressed up in support of you.
I don't remember.
So we got receipts.
I kind of remember. I remember going to the thing, right? And I was invited by this guy that's part of a Viking reenactment group. And so I sort of went along as his guest or whatever. And because I was with him, I was allowed within the encampment. And the whole thing, it wasn't very big. It was a small town kind of affair, but there was about a dozen, maybe a few more Vikings. And they had this full reenactment little camp. And they were right into it. Like they were totally like into it. And I'm looking at the figures in my dream, right? I'm like, this is like another part of the dream. And I'm trying to let it in. Right? I want to let what it is that's being presented to me affect me. And I realized I was, in a certain sense, this is right at the beginning, I realized that I couldn't be Dave. I had to be a freaking Viking, right? To get in there and to feel the vibration of what was actually going on. So we went and bought a bottle of mead off the mead guy, and we're drinking some mead. And it all started being, like this, we're Vikings and da-da-da. And before you know it, there was this whole kind of association that I was feeling with these guys, and that sense of separation between me and these crazy guys that are reenacting Vikings, which was my initial impression in some manner, it dissipated. And I was one of the clan, one of the gang, you know. And it took a minute, actually, it took the whole freaking weekend for me to be able to pull myself out of that association to go back to being a divine being or the Christ mind, whatever, looking at the ideas that are being presented in the dream that need forgiveness and whatever. And there was only one, really. There was a woman that was very brash and very, and she presented to me a side of myself or a mirror reflection in there. But it's like I had to let myself go and be part of it and interact with her and do all this stuff in order to let it to affect me, you know, because there's a very strong sort of tendency to not want to backslide into denial and not want to backslide into, which I realized some time ago isn't helpful. You know, it's like, hang on a minute, I've got the tools now. Let me backslide all the freaking way down and apply those tools wherever I need to. And that's become a kind of a thing. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with it. You know, there's a whole getting out of my comfort zone, I guess. And it's like I would have never thought that joining a Viking encampment would be a way to get out of your comfort zone. It seemed like fun on the outside, but, you know, it's just funny how things show up. You know, it's just a funny kind of, you never know what anything's going to look like. It's like prior to awakening, I would have had no reason to actually want to be part of it. You know,
well,
and I think
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I think at the time with Tina and the group that we were doing, the Satsang group, I think we were talking heavily about getting out of your comfort zone. That was one of the priority and the main ideas in the subject matter that we would discuss. And of course, finger on my nose, I realized that I'm not talking about anything to anyone for no reason. I'm talking about it because I'm the one that needs to hear what's on offer at the table here, you know. So, and the funny thing about the course is one of the things when I read it, it's like you got to teach it to learn it. So I'm teaching that get out of your comfort zone so I can hear it, because that veil of ego density, it's like a cloud, you know, it's like a thick, heavy cloud. And you can say something and not hear yourself say it 100 times, 1,000 times. And it's like all the while, time goes by slowly, and you're getting older and older in the avatar. And it's like those opportunities, you know, they're there all along. It's like those opportunities to forgive and to release and to return my mind, you know, it's like going down the rabbit hole, back out again, down. I love that Donovan song, you know. I don't know if you know Donovan, but first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is, you know.
Yeah, I recall that.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's way back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, way back.
So. Yeah, you know, the effect upon me was so intense, and yet I was still in the middle of a mess, like I told you. Trying to come out of a dark hole, and I heard you, and I remember listening or watching you and Lloyd speak a year or so ago, whenever that was. And you know, I think you said something about this, and maybe Lloyd did too. But the next morning, I thought for sure, for example, that my wife would want to hear about what happened. And I discovered that almost nobody did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah. you can tell somebody that this world is not what you think.
Right.
And the joy and peace that awaits us, that is us. It's not even waiting, but it feels like it is, that awaits us.
Yeah.
Is like, sometimes I describe it like this. Take the most joyful moment of your life, combine it with the most peaceful moment you've ever experienced, combine it with the deepest love you feel like you felt for anybody, and then add to it the most incredible climax you've ever had. Ball it all up together, and it's like nothing.
Times it by a million.
Still nothing. Yeah, I know that you can exponentiate it all you want, but it's just a different dimensional. Not even dimensional. I don't. Again, I'm not into other people's terminology all the time, but I've explained it like it's non-dimensional. It just is, and but when you can share that with someone, and the other person goes, what are you doing tomorrow? Or is it going to rain today? I mean, it just has no. So what I just thought, this is the way the mind goes, right? Someone would want to know, and it's very rare that someone really does, and that's okay. Yeah. That's totally okay.
Very rare.
Yeah, but it's 100% okay, and so I've learned less and less to communicate about that type of thing, unless the moment it's being called forth by spirit, you know, and in that sense, it can be encouraging. But for me, Dave, I like I said, you said 27 years ago. It's been five, not quite 5.5 years for me, and I did the lessons. I only did the lessons once fully. I felt like that was it for me, but I do them in a different way now. What, Tina? What are you doing?
No, I'm just so impressed that one time you did it. I'm just always like, wow.
Well,
and that you felt like you did it thoroughly. Like I stopped doing them last year, but that wasn't after one opportunity. Last year I was like, okay, I think I'm just sort of trying to redo it again. You know what I mean? But
yes,
one time you got it.
What I'm doing right now is I'm going through the lessons where after I do my reading in the morning, I will I'll go to the next lesson, write it down, carry it with me on a card to the beach. But I'm not doing it the way that the lesson is. I'm just being with it. I'm just being with it some, but not like it's told for the day. So I mean, the lesson, to be honest with, for me, they all run together. The tech, I'm talking about the workbook, the text, it's all the same thing to me. It's just a weaving, you know, it does the same thing to me. I mean, the text to me, I know that this is not what's said by everybody, but the text to me is like the workbook. I mean, it's all the same to me.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, so
it makes it reasonable to do the application.
It's still beautiful. It's still very, very beautiful to me to be able to spend that time. And I don't do what I might have done in the early going, which is just make sure I get an hour or two. Actually, when I first opened the book, I was in it 3 to 5 hours a day. I couldn't put it down. It's like my body, something was happening. And again, that was like 2 months before I experienced revelation. But now it's like as soon as I feel like you've had enough, I just stop. You know, and that's you usually. And you know what I do, Dave? Here's what happens to me. I don't know why this happens, but I may read one sentence to start the day, and I sit there. I write a 250 word.
Right.
What I call an article. It just comes down. I write it, set it aside. Maybe the next sentence I do another one. I mean, I probably write 4 articles every morning, 1,000 words. Just and I post one of them sometimes, and sometimes I don't. But it's this just stuff just coming, and that to me is me teaching me, because I express it as it comes into me, and I don't give a shit. Excuse me, my language here. I don't care what anybody thinks about whether I am right on with the course, for example, with what I'm writing. It is, to me, it is, I'm not writing, you know, I don't write to course students. I don't not write to course students. I write just to what's coming out of me, to whoever it is for. And
altruistic.
I don't know. It's just what it is. It's we're all where we're at doing what we're doing, right? And that's just what I feel. And tomorrow it could be different. But there's a lot of people that are speaking just to Course people, more or less, and that's great. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. That's not where I'm at, and
Yeah.
the Course has been my pathway, but I have brought in. It was so helpful to me to learn to read Maharaj, Maharshi, all these people that I would have thought was off their rocks a few years ago. You know what I'm saying? But I was reading, Byron J. All these different Adi Ashanti, whoever. I was reading all these different things because I didn't know anything. I'm just trying to pull stuff in, and finally, pretty quickly, I was like, they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing with little things here. And so I don't criticize any of them for anything. I just don't. I may not agree 100%, like it doesn't totally click, but I'm like, who am I to say? It's just so.
You'd like a thing that happens over here. So we have our Aboriginal culture, right, which is, I guess, kind of like the native Indian culture over there in America. Right. Like a lot of that culture's been lost, and there's a big resurgence to try and reclaim a lot of it, which is I see it on media, and it's the same here in Australia. But I had this beautiful experience once, and this is prior to revelation, right? Prior to awakening. I went to an Indigenous art gallery. I was just driving by and I saw this big barn thing, and it had all Aboriginal art on there. And I turned around, I went back to it, and there was 2 Aboriginal women in there, probably in their early to mid 60s, who were painting, and the whole place was full of their Aboriginal dot paintings and stuff. And I instantly became very interested. I was aware in a very superficial way about the stories of the dream time and dream walking and spirit walking, which is what the Aboriginal law, Lore, is about. And these 2 women were their presence, their presence and their energy that they were giving off was absolutely amazing. They were not like anyone I'd ever met before. And I couldn't talk to them. I asked them if you like, what's this painting about and what's that paint? And they were very polite. They would explain, this one's about the rainbow serpent and how it started the world and how the spirit made man out of the earth, which is the same as in the Bible, and things. And there's all these correlations. They're saying the same thing. And I was really interested in all that at the time because it was part of my journey. I wasn't like I was totally beset with a drug and alcohol addiction because I couldn't handle the voice in my head that was just telling me to kill myself all day. And at the same time, I had all these other influences of a spiritual nature that were trying to show me something else. And I sat with these 2 women for an hour or so while they explained to me about the dreaming. And it made no sense to me at the time. Like, it just totally made no sense that the dreaming, they were telling me the dreaming was over a long, long time ago, right? I couldn't understand that, but yet they were still walking their dreaming, right? Which is everything that the Course says. And they told me that the dreaming technology, or the understanding of the dreaming, the spiritual path in their culture, comes from the star tribes, right? So a culture of people came from the stars, gave them this information, and they were entrusted to keep it sacred and to hand it down and pass it on. And there was always somebody in every mob, in every clan, in every tribe, who was entrusted with that as the medicine person, as the spiritual leader, or the spiritual teacher. And the thing that happened when I was listening to these women, if I would ask a question, they would always leave this kind of a pause before they would say anything, if they said anything. And I thought maybe they didn't understand me because my accent was different or whatever. And it's so funny. Joke's always on me, but it took me a long time and a lot of reading of the Course later on to realize that these women were accepting my healing for me at the time. They were taking on board my ignorance as a character in their dreaming, my questions. Whether they answered me or not was completely beside the point,
It doesn't matter.
Exactly. And I'm like you, I'm like you. Like, I had an awakening, and I thought for sure somebody's going to want to know about this, and I went around and told all my friends. I told my parents, my best friends. I even went and told all my spiritual friends, and they like, yeah, that's nice. You want a bong, like have a joint with me.
Hey, and I write stuff that sort of, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm kind of in this weird place, and I think to most people. So I've got a lot of Christian friends, lots of Christian friends that I think secretly read my stuff. And one time, I don't know what I said, I can't remember it, but one of them, after a year or two of reading my stuff, they're, oh, thank you, we've been praying for you, thank God you've come back, or something like that. I'm like, what the hell did I write to make her think that, but it's we take things how we take them, right? But
yeah.
Man, it's fun. Yeah, I've really sort of not given up, that's not the right word, but I've just let that go, this need to tell anybody certain things. And yet I feel that I am to communicate in whatever quote gifting comes, through me to be able to do so. I'm sorry?
Scout it from the rooftops.
I don't know that term, but it must be up above or something. But
it's biblical. So, yeah, what you hear in the air, shout from the rooftops.
Yes. So, but so it's all about, as as we know, it's all about healing ourselves. Yeah. But we can't heal ourselves without seeing our brother sinless, and yet we, as long as we seem to have these bodies as communication devices, we are going to communicate however it comes to us to do so. But I'm trying, to be honest with you, I have felt like a baby, to be honest with you. I mean, I was so steeped, and I don't mean this negatively, in Christianity. In fact, my dad as a pastor was the most loving man I've ever known. In fact, I still would say this, even though I've met some people lately. In fact, I hadn't met any course students until recently. It was just kind of like a lone wolf kind of thing for me, other than getting in on a chat board or two. But my dad, he instinctively knew that if someone was, when I say instinctively, we're just using words, he knew that if someone looked at him and was angry with him or had a problem with him, he knew that wasn't him. He knew that the other person was feeling something inside themselves, and they weren't seeing the truth. And so he had this enlightened understanding, if you will, that I hadn't, and he was love, and so, I came from that background, and also I come from the background, Dave and Tina, where I'm like, prove it to me. Don't just don't sit there and give me all this stuff. Okay, you believe, I mean, I got taught enough stuff by preachers. You know what I'm saying? Enough stuff by biblical knowers. And yet, where is this peace that passeth understanding? Where is this peace not of this world? Do you know that peace? No, but it's coming when I die. But that's not what Jesus said. So I'm like, I've had enough of people telling me something without sort of giving something. That's where I was at. That's where I was at. And so when I read the like Byron Katie, Eckhart Tolle, I'm reading everything, and I read their stories of awakening. And I'm not debating anybody else's awakening. I'm not not into that. But when I read that, it was very encouraging to me that they were sharing how God, love, universe, what, boom, popped in and did it. And they weren't even seeking. Not that we know of. They weren't on a religious path. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so for me, as I was reading and Maharshi, you know his story, right?
Yep. Yep.
I mean, he's just like a 16-year-old kid or whatever he was. He lays down and basically starts dying inside, whatever it is that happened. It was a crazy story. I hadn't read it in a while, but I needed to start getting stories of, not that you can give you can't give your experience to anybody else. I can't get anybody else's experience, but I can get encouraged by these stories that it's there for me. And so I was kind of like, since then, I have had other experience, Dave, but to me, I'm like this dichotomy of the most basic to the ground person who don't have a clue, in the sense of spiritual experiences like some people have, to experiences heaven in its fullest. It's like the pendulum was so wide in its swing that I have had some other things happen now that I've become open, but I'm still not one who, for whatever reason, in this avatar have experienced, like I listened to you and Lloyd talk, and I'm like, well, that's cool. I don't have to have that. You get what I'm saying? We each have what we have. Yeah. But it's for me, I already know. I like joy. I like peace. I love these things as much as possible. But yeah, I'm rambling a little here, but it's
That's good. I always think that the more spiritual experiences and different things like that you have just means how stubborn you are, really.
because you need them.
Yeah, we got to show this idiot again. It's like, hang on, here's another glimpse of something. Let's see if we can bust you out of your shit this time. So, I don't know if it's like that, but it's
Yeah.
I always come from everything. I always come at everything from the point of view that I am the liar. The truth of me as the Christ mind, dreaming this illusion of a Dave in a world with a billion or however many there are other people. That's something I've experienced, but it's not here and now. It is, but the here and now of me is 2 feet on the ground, and what am I having for breakfast? And in the passage of making that decision, what I'm having for breakfast, it's like everything else that comes forth is sort of like a storyline that's already predetermined. All I got to do is say yes to it and go into it, and then the opportunities show up, and it's like, wow, this is like crazy. I didn't have anything planned today at all, sort of thing. And then the next thing you know, I'm in Africa, or I'm doing whatever, or, I'm at a Viking encampment. It's just crazy.
Was Ragnar there?
Oh, there was a lot of Ragnar wannabes. There was.
Yeah, I actually watched the Viking series and loved Ragnar Lothbrok character. I mean, isn't the guy that started that from Australia?
I don't know. Was that from Australia?
He is. I think my son said that he was from Australia, and he said he wanted to be an actor just so he could go make enough money to go back to Australia, buy a farm, and live on the farm.
Right. I associate more with the Floki character, the guy that built the boats.
I like him. Yes.
He's like, that was more me. I could see myself in him more, that crazy motherfucker, pardon the French, but like that crazy guy is just like, you don't want to push him just too far, because you never know what's going to come out of that thing, because he's like serves the gods and holds that totally, and you can't cross that line with him, And it's like, holy crap. And it's like I saw my zealotry. I saw my I think zealotry is probably the right word, but I saw my zealotry to my beliefs about things, and my lack of openness to other things, And I remember, like you see everything in everything really, but I mean, some things stand out for you more, and you just go, oh, that's me. But it was a good series. I did enjoy it.
I did too. Yeah. Ragnar is one of my favorite characters of all time. So
I don't think I've seen the end of it, actually. I might have to go and see what. Is there 6 series in that? Was there?
I can't remember, but Ivar the Boneless was quite the character. Did you see him? It's one of
Yeah, I
Ragnar's
didn't
sons.
like him.
No,
I didn't like him.
he's
I
not a
thought
likable fellow.
for a group of people who, no, they would have, like, they would have challenged somebody that's 6'6" with a broad axe would have challenged him and took his head off on the first episode. Like he's. You think back in the day, right, of tribal people, if somebody was born disabled, they were seen as a burden to the village, and they were usually dispatched pretty quickly. Which today we don't do that. We nurture those that are born with a disability, but he would have.
So
there was
what we're doing right now is we're simply admitting that we are on some level interested, intrigued with the roles that we're playing.
Right. Right.
I mean, and that's totally cool. The more I feel like that I learn / grow, the less I become legalistic about anything I've learned.
Yeah.
I become. It's sort of, for me, being a guy who used to be a biblical guy, it's like Tina and I talked about this. The 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Dave?
I know Corinthians. I couldn't quote it.
Don't worry about it. It's the love chapter. It's about love. It's no matter how you look. When I had the revelation, I could describe all kind of words. Acceptance was like pure and perfect forever. I mean, if I were to put things in chronological order in my revelation, the first realization would have been acceptance, pure and perfect acceptance by all that could ever matter forever and ever. But and then all these things, but everything is just covered and immersed in with this love indescribable. It's who we are. Yeah. It's all that is. And so when I discuss or get into any kind of communication with anyone about the course or reality, if I start to notice for a second that we're using words, what else are we going to do? This emotion of deep love, if it starts to feel like it's not part of it, I can just check out. I can just, I don't have to comment. I don't have to be, it's like, okay, that's just where it's at right now. It's okay. I know that they're love and I'm love, but we're just getting on. So anyway, I don't know if I'm tangenting too much for you there, but to me, as I grow, and this happens all the time with me here at where I currently live. I know they think I'm way different than I used to be, because I don't know if you can see it in me, but I got some intensity. I used to be very, very intense. I was a university football player here in the United States. Well, back in the United States, and only because if I didn't have the intensity I have, I'd have never made it. But I know that they look at me now like, where's that intensity? Because I just don't get mad at hardly anything, anytime, on any level anymore.
Yeah,
it's just something that's happening. You understand you realize that love is all that really matters. We focus on forgiveness. We focus. I mean, of course we do. Of course we do. But if love isn't covering every bit of it, are we really forgiving?
Right.
I don't know, man. It's maybe I'm out left field on some things, but it's just becoming more that way for me.
I go a little differently at it than that.
Okay.
I go into it with the recognition that I'm always the liar, and that I'm looking for my own denial of love. So when I'm in a conversation, or when I'm in an interaction, or any kind of thing, if I get a prompt right from within, like something will just twig me, and I'll be like, oh, pay attention, there's something going on here. And I don't know how to describe that. It's just kind of like I'm aware of my own process, perhaps.
I think I get it.
Right. So I know that love, unconditional love, because that was, like you said, you had acceptance. My first thing that came out of the Godhead was unconditional love. It's like I just could not love unconditionally, and that was the way it was. But I know that that's the fruit on the tree. Right? But I find myself now back in the dream, planting that seed through Course in Miracles, through forgiveness, through whatever, and watering it all the time and growing the tree, taking care of every branch and everything, knowing that at the end of that branch, there's going to come a moment of joining, a moment of surrender and entering into higher communication or direct communication with my brother through the healing process of what seems to be the separate parts of our relationship. So I know the love is always there. I don't have to worry about it, or if I'm seeing it, that's for me only, but I don't have to worry if I'm seeing it or experiencing it. And in some cases, I feel a lot like Jesus says, I send you out amongst the wolves, or something, a lamb amongst the wolves. And it's like, I know I'm going into the wolf's territory. I know that there's going to be no love for me, and I'm not going to expect any better treatment than Jesus got. Like they nailed him to a damn piece of wood. But I know that underneath all that, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do. The love is there. All I got to do is allow myself in my own awareness of my processing, I allow myself to enter into that situation or into that darkness, which is my own darkness, really mind darkness, fully, until I get to the point where, because darkness is a limitation, until I get to the point where that limitation shows itself. And that's always emotional. It's always energetic. And then I stand there defenselessly and I let the Lord enter into that situation, and the love returns. But I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not really making any choices about it until that intercession from on high happens. And then I know that that's the fullness of whatever is potentially contained within that relationship. Nothing more than that can occur, because the miracle takes care of absolutely everything.
Correct.
Like in here, it's like I'm just there to be defenseless and to. That's how I see myself anyway. I mean, maybe, like you said, maybe there's another thing going on, and there's always another thing going on. Like this meeting is always something else going on. And this will probably unpack in my consciousness for the next few days, and it'll just go over and over a bit. And I'm just going to let that happen,
Yeah.
But,
no, that's a very good word picture. I like that. I like pictures.
Yeah,
I'm
a bit artistic.
I like folks to draw things out for me and not just, regurgitate lines that are in a book, I like that.
Yeah. I'm artistic.
Yeah,
Look, I'm covered in pictures.
And I don't,
you know how they say you don't have one?
Ahead.
You have to come
I
for
don't
a
have
holiday.
a single one. No. I don't have a single one. I'm not against them at all. I just don't have one.
I used to be against them completely, but pretty much all of these now have some sort of relevance to spiritual something, and they all mean nothing now. But at one time they were like, oh, I'm going to get this tattoo because I just learned about compassion or whatever,
Tina, do you have any tattoos?
Faith Street.
Do I have anything?
Do you have any tattoos?
Oh, no. I'm taking my body back clean.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, if you watch Dave, he's a tatted up dude, but
I know. He said he was going to give me one when I go to Australia, but you don't have one either?
Mm-mm.
That's right. We're going to get all our money back.
Yeah. You don't get your deposit back if you bring it back dirty.
I just have that one scar from my little bike wreck. But nope. Good.
As you're talking, Dave, and I was listening to you, and when I listened to you and Lloyd, and I was thinking about this today, not even about this conversation, but I was thinking about how, God, we got to be so, we're all our own package on this earth. our own package of DNA, parents, cultural, reincarnate, whatever. We're just, so our paths all have some uniqueness to them, and so however we see it, we have to be careful. There's certain things that we know, yeah, but we, for me, I try to be a little bit careful how I maybe sort of try to push specifics on somebody. It's just, I mean, there are specific. I mean, I'm a big believer in basically everything the course says, but you can pick and choose out of it, just like you do in the Bible. You can you can pick and choose and leave something behind and take something that you drill somebody into somebody that without the other part of it, So, I mean, because the course, you can sit there as you read it, you can read one thing and then in the next paragraph it seems to say something else, maybe even the next sentence. I don't know, and it's because you have to realize who's being talked to. So I don't know. I'm learning. That's why I told you I feel like a babe in some ways. This is I was so indoctrinated into a certain way of being. Lost my daughter, went crazy, and then 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago, came across the course and Revelation. So it's been a process of me, and I immerse myself deeply, but it's still a process where I feel like there's certain things that I feel like I can communicate very clearly, and yet it's not always received clearly. At least it's like, did I say that? I thought I wrote this or said that, But I'm just trying to continue to grow, to be honest with you, in my understanding, so that I can communicate better with my brothers. And Tina knows I even say sisters. I'm not addicted to just saying brothers.
I said sisters the other night. I've started this new thing here, this clan group.
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, well,
I wanted to ask about that too. Thanks, Phil.
Okay, so this is about getting out of the comfort zone, changing the form and everything like that, and just saying yes to something else, right? So prior to the clan, I used to do this thing called Life in the Park. And I started it off, I just put a flyer on social media, Life in the Park, every Tuesday, bring a blanket, sit under the tree with me, and let's just chew the fat about life, the universe, and everything. And out of that, I got Dean and Michelle, who became very incredibly interested in the course, have completed the workbook. Dean came from a background of losing about 4 or 5 of his family members within a 12-month period, and like manically suicidal, just didn't want to be here. And Michelle, from whatever her background was as well. But both of them have taken it on board to the best of their own capacity. Dean's very... he's very much the proselytizer, and Michelle's very much more subtle and just sits in a relationship with someone, and like everyone has their own way with it, right? So perfectly beautiful either way. The whole thing's just freaking amazing. I'm just so grateful. But anyway, that came to a kind of an end, and then my friend Bear, he passed away from throat cancer about 4 or 5 years ago, and his widow has come to this area because the day, I think, or maybe it was even the day that he passed, he'd been following stuff I've been doing on Facebook. And he said, I got to go see Dave. He's talking all this stuff and I'm hearing it and whatever. We've got to go see Dave. He was doing chemo and everything. He got up from the table and dropped dead, like in the form, right? And never made it. But his widow decided she was going to come, and she's moving to the area because Bear and I were so close. We were like kin, like clan. And Bear would always go on about his clan, right? So Joe's here and she's doing the workbook and she's reading the thing in memory of him partly, and for her own thing as well, because they both had an interest in it. And so we decided, or partly I decided I wanted to kind of nurture some kind of environment, because I was very lucky or very blessed that I had an environment of being presented many, many teachers and many students of the course all together in one healing facility. And there's nothing like that up here where I feel like I can return the favor. So I started this thing now called Clan, which is Celtic for family. And I'm just starting to get it going. And like Friday night, we had about probably 25, 30 people maybe turn up, and we did an intentional listening workshop where one person would pair off and one person talks and one person listens, with the perspective that we're listening for our spiritual good in the conversation, not just about whatever the weather's going to be or whatever, because there's always the spirit speaks through everyone and everything. So there was this kind of workshop to do with that. And so the clan is just another manifestation of the offering of salvation through a specific form. And it'll change as well. You know, it'll have its usefulness, and it'll come and go like all things. But for now, that seems to be what's happening.
Well, I had not looked close, but I saw a couple of posts. I didn't even know it was a group of you. I thought maybe you were introducing some people that you liked where they were at, and da 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 da. I had not looked close enough to know that y'all started a group. I wanted to say to you, see, we come from, in some ways, almost, you know, opposite as far as that goes, because I have had no teacher. I had actually, early in my going, I knew this mystic lady out in New Mexico, and I asked her about possibly her, you know, and she had messaged me back. This is several years ago. She meditated on it and felt like I was supposed to be my own, and I was sort of like, well, shit, you know. I've never had anybody. Yeah, you know, it's sort of like, but she was like, no, she felt like I was supposed to, whatever, and so that's all I've done. It's when you live where I live in Costa Rica, it's not like a haven for course students, for one thing, you know. So I just, you know, it's been beautiful though. But I haven't had. I finally went this past fall to a group of course students out of the thing in Utah for 10 days. But I did that just because I wanted to finally get together with some other course students, you know. And it was, I was the most agitated person there. I could, well, I think I was, but based on what I was hearing, for some reason, I was just so agitated. I don't know why.
That's
it was
good.
like, I don't, you know, I didn't debate whether it was what it was. And
Where two or more are gathered.
it was like, what's wrong with me? You know, it was beautiful too. It was both, you know, but,
yeah.
And I made some beautiful, beautiful, joinings and brothers from there, and sisters. Yeah. And anyway, so we're kind of different in that sense. So I'm not necessarily envious, to be honest with you. It is what it is. You know, things have been beautiful. I think it's just been my journey. You know,
it's horses for courses.
What?
It's horses for courses. You know that saying?
I think I've heard it, but how does it apply? What does it mean?
It means everyone has their own path they're best on. So you're not going to put a plow horse in a running race, you know. But the plow horse, when you put the plow horse in the field, it's going to do stuff that a running horse can't do, you know. So, but at the same time, they're both fulfilling their function as the horse, you know. So
yeah. So what happened for me then was, when I first got the course, I got on a thoroughbred, and then it kicked me off, and I landed on a mule. That's pretty much what happened, you know.
I think that's pretty across the board. I feel the same way.
I've been on a mule ever since.
Right. Hey, Jesus, Mary and Joseph brought Jesus on the mule, so don't knock it.
Well, okay.
Horses for courses.
Yeah, I got you. No,
yeah, absolutely. You know, before the course came along, and I found myself in that place where there was, like, Ted was the most incredible teacher. I would pitch him above the Mahashis and above, if there was a hierarchy of teacher, he was always on. His light was always on. There was never a moment. His guard was never down. He was never a figure in the dream. He was always on. And most people would tell you they couldn't hang around him for long. They couldn't spend more than 5 or 10 minutes. And there was a few guys that were contemporary to him that could hang out for an afternoon or whatever. but his energy was just so powerful. I used to go in the afternoons, even though he was my teacher. I was told from on high he was my teacher, you know. Even though he was my teacher at the time, I would go to him. I'd say what I had to say. He'd tell me whatever he had to tell me, and then I'd have to go. I couldn't sit there and watch football with him, or I couldn't sit there and just chill out with him or anything like that, because I could feel this intensity and this sort of thing. And it's like, whew, I'm not there yet, you know. I'm not at that place where I can be around. It'd be like if Jesus sort of come back today and be like, hey, come for a walk with me. It's like, dude, you're Jesus. And I guess maybe that's something to do with worthiness, or maybe I don't feel that I'm, you know, but there's this whole thing that goes on. It's like, man, I came out of this Godhead where I feel like I was just the perfect being and I was one with all things and everything was how it was meant to be, back to being this kind of like useless, fucked up kind of Dave, you know. And I still had, when I came out of it, I was completely and immediately released from my addiction to alcohol. Like from that day forward, cannabis was still there. I was still using it a little bit, but, you know, something changed in a major way, but I was still just the biggest doofus I'd ever been. You know, it's like, I think if I'd had gone from what I was shown about myself as a thing I could represent here on earth to being that in that space of an instant, it would have been too much for me to comprehend. You know, I think like Jesus talks about the transition as being a slowly evolving training program, and I'm glad for that, really. Like, I don't think I could have, and there's been times it seems to have been fast paced and you're right in the thick of it, you know, but I don't think I could take it to the point of being in the thick of it all the time. But
yeah, I'm telling you, it was so beautiful that we know that we're one, and yet our pathways on this are just so different. And so I've never been in a communal living or environment or any of that type of stuff. You know, I'm not anti at all. It just wasn't my scripted path, right?
Yeah. I wasn't going to go and be with all these people, right? So this is a funny thing. And so I had the full revelation the day I walked into that center, not knowing it even existed. I had a full revelation. I just walked in the door basically and stood there for a minute listening, and then boom, the whole world vanished and my body was gone. I didn't even know. I wasn't expecting anything. I'd never heard of. And after that, I stayed there for the whole weekend. But after that, I went back to my life an hour and a half away, you know, and carried on as normal. And then I went back the next weekend and went back to my life out of a sense of ignorant curiosity, really. I guess you don't really, I'm trying to find the words here, but you don't really appreciate what's happening sometimes until finally it just becomes more valuable than what's not happening in your life. And I remember I was sitting at the markets one day. I was smoking a big joint, just sitting on a bench. And in those days, I had dreadlocks and I was a hippie and everything like that, you know. And I was sitting on a bench, and Annie, who Tina knows Annie, but Annie came up to me. She was at the markets, and she walked up and she starts talking to me. Oh, hey, brother, how you going? Like that. And I was like off my head. I'm just enjoying the day, you know. And I don't know whatever I said to her. And she just looked me straight in the eyes and she goes, man, you got all the energy of a dead fish. You need to get to Byron Bay and start doing your training. That's what she said to me. And for some reason, it hit me so hard. I realized I was wasting the gift that the revelation had given me, you know, that I needed to now begin to integrate it into my life through using those workbook lessons and applying the principles. But like when I came out of the Godhead, nobody actually said that to me directly like Annie did. I was just sort of left to my own devices. And I thought, oh, this is a nice place. And I've just had this thing that's fried my brain happen to me, and I don't know how to deal with it. But I couldn't put two and two together, you know. I couldn't put the fact that I'd been guided to that place and given the book and had the revelation had any resemblance of a divine direction that this is where I want you to be, Dave, and do this. You know, it's like I
yeah. By the way, what's Annie's last name by chance?
Liley,
Yeah,
Liley, and
I don't know her, but I recognize his name. I guess we're Facebook friends.
yeah, Annie is amazing too. Annie's just like, I mean, we're all amazing, but Annie has this whole other thing going on as well. So I know.
Let me go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
No, I was going to say, let me just share this because it just clicked in my mind something you were saying when you were talking about that I remember hearing you and Lloyd, and I wanted to say that you know, we use our human minds to rationalize about what spirit is. It's impossible. I mean,
Yeah.
we use words and all of our experiences here to try to consider and get argumentative and debate and paint these pictures, et cetera, right? But as the Course says, revelation is not, you know the words better than me, but it's not wordable. And so, but when the entire time during that I experienced revelation, and I use the word time, excuse me, you know, just the whatever was happening. Phil's body is laying in the bed in the middle of the night. Nothing else was happening. Right. I didn't go anywhere. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? There was no locational thing. There was no, it just was simply, this is where, when I start to even think about communicating with somebody about bodies and locations and things to do, it's a very difficult thing to consider that you could just be in a state of pure joy. Just that's it. And it, because here our experience is, well, it's here, you know, it feels, oh, it's going to go down. It's just, okay, I want to feel it again. That's the way we live life here, with the contrast, with the change. We can't understand how there could be this constant state. It doesn't make any sense to the human mind. But yet, you know, this is one of the only things I know, that it is. It simply is. And yet, there was nothing at all I could communicate about things. There were no things. There were no bodies. There were no nothings. And yet it's the most beautiful, it's not conceivable, and yet we use that term. It's the most stunning thing you could conceivably conceive of. You know, the reality of who we are. You know, so I just think it's fascinating that we as human beings want to be able to see it, you know, and because we think we have to see everything and experience through it, through our human condition. I think this even relates to how when Jesus walked the earth, and as soon as I say that, I have some people say, did he walk the earth if he wasn't real? And blah, blah. Look, listen, I'm past that. When Jesus was here as a human, he even says it in the Course, as a man, he spoke in parables. He's, you know, it used to frustrate me as a Christian, Dave. You know, the disciples, why are you doing this? Because the truth can't really be heard. It can't really be spoken. So you just tell stories to me, it's like, tell the story and maybe it jiggles a little something here, opens a little space, jiggle a little something here. You know what I mean? Do you have the ears to hear so that it can do its work within you? You know, but the revelation itself, I've kind of bounced around here, but the revelation itself was, to me, impossible to explain, partly because there was nothing there. I didn't go anywhere. There was no, I didn't see any lights, by the way. I didn't see nothing, but I saw everything. I don't know. It's just not, you know, we just want to make it into a human experience of some sort.
You mentioned Eckhart Tolle before.
I did.
About how that experience is, and I remember listening to the Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey also had that same experience, right? So I remember listening to him trying to describe it, and then right at the end he goes, and ever since then I've been trying to get back there, right? Trying to get back to that state, you know, and like that was it for me too. For many years I was trying to get back to that state. I'd kind of gone past this point where I realized I can't explain this to anybody. You know, no one's going to understand this. I kind of went through a period of not talking to anybody. And people started to come out of the woodwork a little bit. And there was an opportunity there for me to teach and to hear, you know, and to teach and to learn. But in the course, there's a bit where Jesus talks definitively about communication. And that's one of the things that I entered into. I learned, I don't know how to talk about it. I took on board somehow, and it seems as if it's sort of done it by itself, just in the natural process of things. But there's a thing that occurs now in me, which, again, I can't really explain it to anyone. If I'm in proximity, it seems, with somebody who's also awake or awakened, that I can share a moment, opening my mind, that harks to not reincarnation, harks to communication that's not of this world. You know, and that occurs in the silence. And it's like, I remember Ted used to do this funny thing to me. I caught him doing it once. I never knew it was him doing it, right? I used to think, why is this happening? My body would go into a spasm. So we used to do this meditation, and then sometimes there'd be 120 people in the room, sometimes only 50, whatever. But he would always be in his teacher's chair, whatever, and then he would do his thing, and then we'd do a standing meditation, which I'd never done before. Any attempt I'd ever had at meditation was always sitting down and whatever. But we would do this standing meditation, there'd be music on, and stuff would just start happening, right? Ted would open his mind, and there was other guys, and I don't know if I was contributing, but I guess everything contributes to the whole somehow. So, but when my body's eyes were open, I would see people with things happening that I couldn't explain, like moving around the room without moving their legs, you know, and everybody coming from the like moved by the spirit, literally. I even had a woman crash into me once. I was standing sort of at the outer and sort of listening to the music, not really getting into it. And this woman just come flying back at me without moving and smacked into me, and we both fell to the floor. Right? It was bizarre. And you from the outside looking in, you'd say, oh, there's some phenomena going on here. But really, it's the activity of spirit, you know. And I remember one day I'm standing there, and I was going through, in parallel with doing the course, I seem to have gone through all these different stages, right? And healing myself of cancer was one of those primary stages. I had no drugs, no nothing. And that was intense. I couldn't tell you how that took its toll on my body, but I went through it, right? I came out the other side of that, and I seemed to enter into this period where I would fall down all the time. Like I'd be standing there in meditation, and it'd be like someone kicked my knees out from behind, and I would collapse to the ground, right? And I'm like, why is this happening? Why do I keep falling down? Every time I seem to still my mind, my body just undergoes this radical collapse. And one day I'm standing there in meditation. Ted's in front of me, and he's got two fingers. I open my eyes, right, in the for some reason, and Ted's got two fingers, and he just goes like that, and I fell to the ground instantly. And he saw me catch him doing it, you know. And I had to ask him, I'm like, what the hell is that? You know, like, I know you had some part in that. And he's like, no, I'm just a catalyst. He said, I'm just a catalyst in whatever's going on for you in your own thing. And I couldn't understand it, still don't really to this day. But on the outside of that transition from that, there seems to be this thing in the last few years where when my mind opens now, people who have had course training and been through the workbook and whatever, we actually join in this kind of moment. And I don't know if it's what it refers to in the course as holy instance. Mm-hmm. I phrase it as that because I don't have another reference for it. So I'm just guessing, I guess, that, that must be that. And Dean, who I was telling you about before, he's someone who we've spent an intense amount of time together. And he and I just sit there and we'll just laugh. Like we just have this, we don't say nothing. We just have this mind-opening thing. My mind open, his mind opens, and we just start laughing, like it's ridiculous. And it reminded me of that Jim Carrey thing where he says, I've been trying to get back there. And it's like, so now whenever anybody asks me about how they're doing with the course or anything like that, I just tell them, just keep going. Just keep going. I can't really give you any solid advice. I can tell you my stories, but just keep going. I haven't had anger or problems or anything for at least a decade. None of it. Nothing, and things come and go in and out of my life and I have no attachment to them. And I don't know how the hell I got to this point. It's just bizarre.
Do you have like a sliver of anger comes and you see it and go, it just goes right by? You don't even.
No.
Yeah, because I'm sort of at that right now where it's like I'll feel it and I'm like, oh, and it just doesn't stay. But I don't have a total non. You know what I'm saying?
I have a total non, and I'm completely surprised about it. Like I'm witnessing that what I once thought would have been a reaction isn't even there, and I even consciously try to search it out. Right. Maybe I'm in denial. Maybe I'm so course in miracles brained. I'm just blocking myself with all my concepts, but it's not even that.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, I had a question for you, but I'm listening intently. So at my age, if I don't get the question out pretty quick and I don't have a pen to write it down, it goes.
I'm the same.
You know what, you guys? There's a question. You guys were on it a second ago, but there's a little question in the chat. Can I ask the question from the chat?
Go for it.
Awesome. This is a guy, he's just started studying a course, and I've been having this conversation too, so this will be helpful for me. He says, I've started to apply the lessons into my life and started to feel a new way of thinking and experiencing, almost like a new presence of my being. This is the question. Are those just more meaningless thoughts? He says what you just said, but I want to just stop at that part because I've been having that conversation too about, because Dave, you often say it too, none of these thoughts mean anything, including your spiritual thoughts. So,
absolutely.
When I think about it, I think about Phil, you and I sent it to you, brother, too, that experience of that guy, that kid who had that just God showed up. And he said, I didn't need to know who it was. He goes, I knew who it was. I knew he never had the experience before. He said, I didn't look around. I didn't have to ask who the voice was. I knew. So is that the same thing? This is not what Blue Ketchup said, but this is my question in relation to that, Blue. If none of my thoughts mean anything, including my spiritual thoughts, does it really come down to the point where you don't even question? You know what I mean? It says the only thoughts I think with God my only real thoughts are the ones I think with God. So there's no question. If there's still a lingering doubt in my mind, then it can't possibly, because God is only clarity, right? I mean, yeah, what do you say? Yeah.
I like some. When you were talking there, my mind flipped back to something Phil said just a little bit earlier on, but I've lost it again now because the thing.
You guys
forgot. I know, right? But
so let me go back to what.
Oh no, I got it. I remember it.
Okay.
Come back to me. So part of, I'm assuming that's a question, right? Firstly, and Phil, jump in anywhere if you want to jump in here, like help me out. But Phil said something before about he's a little bit wary or a little bit conscious about who he offers the information to and how he presents it, like being a bit careful not to overfill the cup. Does that sound right, Phil?
More or less.
Yeah, so something like that. So, but the thing also I find is, like, if somebody's got to the stage where they've actually got the course book themselves, that's happened by a divine precedent in their lives, right? If they've got that book, they're ready for whatever that book says. They may not understand it, but Jesus makes no mistakes who he brings to his course, right? So the idea, like lesson 10, my thoughts don't mean anything, that's across the spectrum, right? Because the course itself is also an illusion. It's an anti-illusion, if you like, or it's a reverse illusion. It's a forgiveness illusion, which brings about the readiness for revelation. And what happens is when you hear that lesson 10, when it really drops in, like the penny drops, my thoughts don't mean anything, and then my spiritual thoughts don't mean anything as well.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people tend to think that their worldly thoughts are being replaced in the course by spiritual thoughts, and it's not true, right? Those spiritual thoughts are just a catalyst for getting out of the idea of that any thought means anything altogether. But when you truly hear that, when that penny drops, you're like in this kind of place of, now what? Right? What do I do now? Because the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to want to look into one of your thoughts again to try and tell you what to do next. Right? What do I make of that? Well, how am I going to answer that unless it's with my own thoughts, which I've just been told don't mean anything, right? So there's this whole space that can open up there. There's this whole emptiness, this whole pause. You know, be still and know that I'm God.
So let me sort of ask. It's injecting and asking at the same time. Is I mean, you know, the ego doesn't exist. And yet it affects us deeply. So as we consider this thing, you know, just like the lessons themselves, or throughout the day, we're taking the thoughts of the lessons until this is just my ask. I'm saying something, but I'm really asking something. Are we not using the thought that the course is giving us so that we can release all thoughts, but we're using them to get to that point where we release them? Just, you know, the ego is doing what it takes to release the ego. We have to. I'm not wording that well. But
Yeah. Like Ramana Maharshi, I'm using the thorn to get the thorn out. You know, I have to use something. I need something because I still think that I'm a something, and there's something outside of me. So while I'm still thinking I'm a something, I need a something. I need a book. I need a lesson. I need another thought, another way to think about this.
But the ego is being lured into deciding against itself.
Unwinding itself. Like the one that starts the journey is not the one that, the one that starts the journey is the one that's being unwound by the journey. Yeah?
Yeah.
I forgot what
that which doesn't exist comes to realize that it doesn't exist.
I can mess you guys up. Count on me to mess you up.
It's like a spinning top with a design on it, and you're trying to watch the design. You know, it's like it's going around and around and around. You're trying to catch the little picture on the spinning top. It's like, nah, forget about it.
No, I just fulfilled the thing we were talking about.
Oh, good.
Not sure if it was intentional or not, but yeah.
Well,
I don't know if that answers Blue Ketchup's question.
Yeah,
just read that question again, Tina.
Sure.
I want to do this. I want to put this into play.
Sure. So it says, I've started to apply the lessons into my life and started to feel a new way of thinking and experiencing, almost like a new presence of my being. Are those just more meaningless thoughts? He does say more. My intuition says just keep practicing what's been working and don't think too hard. But I wonder about your take on it. So that's the full question.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you practice. That's what the course is, a curriculum, you know. So we're learning. We're learning to release the need to learn. You know,
Blue Ketchup's head exploded. Right on, Blue.
But is there actually a picture of it exploding, or
it is? Yes, it is. That's sort
blue?
of yeah. No, it's just, you know, it's blue with 2 O's. Blue Ketchup. Thanks, Blue.
So I just want to throw this in there. This is for Blue Ketchup. So when you're reading that, right? So the Course in Miracles is a process. It has 365 lessons. Some people do it once, some people do it twice, some people never stop doing it, whatever. It's a thing, right? But at any point, Blue Ketchup, at any point, in any moment, you can simply be done with the course. Okay? every lesson is the same lesson. Every page says the same thing. And it's just being presented over and over and over in a different way. The nature of your perfection. And at any moment you can be like, hang on a minute, let me enter into that now and experience it for myself. Right? And Jesus, like, because we've been touching on biblical things, be still and know that I am God. Right? The whole teaching of the course, the whole teaching of anything, even in the dark night of the soul, be still and know that I am God, is, whether you're conscious of it or not, is entering into that circle in the desert with Jesus for a second and transcending death, transcending the limit of the idea of human consciousness. Right? It's like a pendulum swinging. I don't know if I'm going to do a good job of this, but it's like the consciousness is like a pendulum swinging, and eventually when it stops, right, these noisy good, bad, dualistic thoughts, eventually when it stops, it's going to hang dead center and be perfectly peaceful. Right? And the Course in Miracles, you go from these big wild adventures at the bottom and you work your way slowly up to the top, to the pivot point where it doesn't really move at all. Right? But that pivot point, that perfect peaceful thing, it passes that point. It's not the pendulum itself. It passes that point of potential to be still right there every time you cross between one thought to another thought. But it happens so quickly in your mind, you'll go from thinking about a black elephant or a black cow to a glass of water, and you won't even recognize the tiny little infinitesimal instant between those thoughts. But at any time, you can be like, I'm just going to be still in that instant, and I'm going to allow that to occur. And I don't know if you remember, like in the old days of cameras, you had a roll of 35mm film. There was a little black line between each negative frame. And when you play the film on a movie, it goes so fast, you can't see that black line between the negatives, right? When you slow the movie down, you're like, hey, there's a little black line connecting all these pictures. I thought it was one seamless thing going on here. Meditation is like that. Being still is like that. I'm entering into that stillness and I'm finding that instant between my thoughts, because I'm realizing my thoughts don't mean anything themselves, right? What else is there then that goes on in my consciousness that my thoughts are trying to hide me from, right? And I always liken that little tiny thin black line on the thing to a doorway where you still your mind down. Jesus says, knock and the door shall be opened. And it's like, man, between my thoughts or behind my thoughts, I don't know how to really talk about it so clearly, but it's there. You know, lesson 1, lesson 300.
Course in Miracles.
Right.
Hey,
it has to be something I can't even. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
As I was walking on the beach this morning, the knocking on the door scripture was in my mind quite a bit. So it's interesting you use that. But I thought to myself, we're all tapping.
Right.
You know, it's time to knock, you know, because if you knock, it's open.
Yes.
And
I
actually,
got to be unwound from my fear. Yeah, I got to be unwound from my fear. Or I will.
In a dramatic way, that pendulum you were speaking of, that hit that spot in the midst of my extreme despair, because I was desperate to not be thinking. And it's a weird thing. You're desperate, which makes you think. And yet the breathing somehow took me to that still space, which is knocked open heaven's door. So
that's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting to me that you were talking about it as the breathing.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I had just learned to meditate, dude. Here I am. I guess I was 58 or 9. It was my first time ever learning to meditate. Yeah. So I was doing in with the breath, out with the breath. I was doing it every morning, every night, and that was my only hope. The only hope I had to find any even remote relief was to become present. That was it. I somehow knew this little nugget said become present, become at that place. And that was, if as I look back, you know, it's really hard to put words, but I believe the becoming present was very relevant to my revelation, to the revelation I had. Yeah. So, Yeah, I mean, every holy instant could become that, right? Because it says it can be, you can enter a
Right.
holy instant and forever.
Yeah. I get
There's a,
flashes of light behind my consciousness, when I enter into that holy instant, when I enter into that moment of stillness. And Jesus talks about them as beautiful flashes in the Course, and eventually how you want to go beyond just the beautiful flashes into revelation. And I had revelation first before the Course came to me. And so I've been, for many years, I've been in this confusion of trying to go from the top down, of having had the thing first and then doing mind training. Whereas most people who, let's say, I mean, you're a bit like me, you're top down as well, but most people have it from the bottom up, where they come into some sort of spiritual practice and then begin to have experiences. And so for me, I had to kind of reverse engineer the Course. When Jesus would talk about things, I had to step back, and reassess where I was at with that, when he talks about becoming revelation ready. And then I had one brother who was from Wisconsin. He was out in Australia for a while, and I was talking to him about my revelation, and he was telling me how he had a walk with Jesus, right? I'll just tell you, this is beautiful. His wife was dying from cancer, and he was praying and praying like crazy. It was past the point of chemo, past everything, and she was on the way out. And he was praying, and then I think he was walking on the beach or something the following morning, and Jesus took him from the beach. I get all choked up, man. I tell this story.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Jesus took him from the beach, took him from his body up to this place. And the way he described it, he said it was like this black and white marble floor that went on forever. And up the sides of the marble floor where he was walking right beside Jesus was these gold columns, these massive columns that went way up, higher than his eyes could see, into eternity. And Jesus and him walked together right to the very edge of this floor and looked out into the nothingness. And something happened to him in the nothingness that relieved him of all his worries and all his fears. Like, it's a personal thing, but I can't remember why I'm telling this story now. But anyway.
It's a beautiful one.
Oh, man. It's, and his wife passed, but he was able to release all worry and all concern about it, But
for what it's
anyway,
worth,
I forget that.
It may come back to you here. When my daughter was dying, it was the opposite for me. it was
Right.
It was hell upon hell upon hell, and I will tell that story. In fact, I'm writing about it. Which anyway, I'll talk about that some other time. But it was unbearable almost every step of the way. I did not have what your friend had. Mine came later, but the avatar of my daughter came to me during the process of after she died. People, we talk about there's no bodies in heaven, and there's not. I mean, there was no body, there was nothing, and yet in the process of something going that way, my daughter, avatar wise, however you want to call it, has been a part of helping me along the way. Just like we help each other, she has helped me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, for whatever reason, I thought I was spiritual back then. Whatever that means, but yeah, immediately when my daughter died, I think I've told Tina this, I haven't told you this, Dave, but I knew I was supposed to write about it, and the original title, and it may still be the title because I'm writing it now, of a book about me and her death and the journey that it sent me on, was "Fuck You, God," because the God that I thought I knew,
Yeah.
I was like, hey, listen, dude, this is how messed up I was. At her funeral, people would come, at the end of the funeral, they're coming up, and I'd look and I'd say, God fucked me, fuck my baby, and they're like probably running around the corner, hitting their knees, praying for my soul, But I was so angry. I was out of my mind angry. But that's why I decided I had to put everything I ever believed aside and go on this journey. And it's the journey that has led me to where,
Wow.
where we are, So she has been, if I had had the experience that he had, we all have our own past, so there's no reason to get into that. But it was the pain of losing her, and the incredible anger I had, that actually propelled me.
Yeah, I remember Kevin telling me that his takeaway from his revelation was something like that: we all go on forever, like we exist forever, not as these bodies, and that relieved him of all. It's like in the course, even it says revelation is a temporary but all across the board release from the concerns of time and space, or something like that. I forget how it's worded, but it's an immediate release from everything.
I think my computer's gonna die pretty soon.
Yeah,
That's
y'all
cool.
been talking for over an hour and a half, saying that you didn't have anything to say.
I'm at 11%.
Yeah, well,
this is one of those computers that can go when it's at 10%. It goes when it won't stay.
No. I know you're in the jungle. You're in the jungle.
I'm borrowing a room. My charger's elsewhere. So.
No. All right. Well, let's call it. If you think.
All right.
Hey, Phil, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you as well. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, thank you, brothers.
I love you both.
Thank you, Blue Ketchup.
I think Blue. I got a King Dale Clark's question answered in that too. So right on.
Well, I'm just letting you know I could fall off. That's all I'm saying.
No.
Oh, okay. Well, do we have anything else, Tina? Come on, spit it out.
No, I think you guys are good.
You've been very quiet this whole time.
I never have questions. I rarely have questions. I'm good. No, I think that's everything. Unless anybody in the chat got something real quick before Phil falls off. I messed this totally up. So you guys will have to forgive.
That's nothing new.
I know, right?
We're used to that by now. Done it to ourselves.
Where did you mess up?
Oh, everything. The live, But it worked out. So you guys are all good? Everybody's good? All right, cool.
Yeah, we're all good.
Everybody's good. In the chat, they're all good too. So thank you guys for joining in the chat. Holla.
Thank you, brothers and sister.
I gave my Facebook page, so Facebook communication, so holla at me. Love you guys. Thank you, brothers.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys.
Let's do something else soon. Bye, Phil.
Bye-bye.